Birchas. We'll just quickly review some of the points and then we'll continue. So we discussed last week the Gemara in Birchas about the 4 different brachas instituted for Birchas Hamazon. The Torah tells us V'chalta v'zavato v'rachta. The Gemara in Birchas learns out on Daf Memches that we have the 4 brachas we make during benching. Moshe instituted the first bracha for the man, Yoshua on Eretz Yisrael, David and Shlomo on Yerushalayim, and the Chacham made it for Harugei Beitar on the 4th bracha. So the poskim, we all assume the first 3 brachas are biblical in nature, and the last bracha of the Harugei Beitar, that's only rabbinical. And that's why the Rishonim point out, that's why we finish off Bon Bracha B'Yishalayim Amen. Where else do we enter Amen to our own brachas? To show that we're finishing a unit. So we're finishing the end of the biblical mitzvah and the beginning of the rabbinical mitzvah. Like we mentioned, of Svi Pesach, Frank mentions in the Mikroi Kodesh regarding Sfiras HaOmer. A whole share on it we've given many times, whether Sfiras HaOmer is Daraisa, D'Rabbanan, Bizman Hazeh. Everyone agrees it was Daraisa. There's a sheet in the Rishon, Rabbeinu Yerucham, who makes a distinction. Weeks biblical and days biblical, weeks rabbinical. So that's what the Rav Sifat points out. The meaning among some Svardim that they say La'omer after the weeks, after the days, before the weeks, to break up the days and weeks, in order to show the days are biblical La'omer. Now let's finish off with the rabbinical mitzvah. So that's what they say by benching. We finish off the rabbinical, the biblical, and then we move into the rabbinical. Then we got into the issue of the first bracha of Moshe Rabbeinu Hazanas HaKol. It was after the man. So why was it now? Why was it given at the end of Sefer Dvarim? We went into the Ramban in the B'Hakdama to Sefer Dvarim that the many mitzvahs in Dvarim that were given for the Dor HaNichnas L'Eretz Yisrael and us, but in contrast to the door before Eretz Yisrael, not after, that the Dor HaMidbar, since it was a miraculous occurrence, it didn't really have any brachas in, and that's why also we find Birchas HaTorah later on, coming up in a couple of weeks. So according to the Nitziv and others, they didn't make any brachas then, because you only make brachas on natural occurrence. There's the supernatural occurrences, so Chazal never instituted a bracha. Not everyone agrees with that, so there's a whole discussion, the Rishonim Achronim, on whether they make a bracha at all on the man, and if they did make a bracha, what bracha would they have made? So there's different opinions. Joseph Engel discusses in the Galyonei Hashas in brachas. He discusses the issue whether tamo mamasho, whether the man actually, when you tasted and changed its substance when you ate it, or it just kept the same substance, but it tasted like whatever you wanted. Nafkamina, if you want a cheeseburger, you want to have your ice cream right after the meat, or whatever. So he points out, according to the opinion, it says tamo mamasho. And if we assume that you wanted it to be bread, or like some say, it did fall down as bread, so then you could discuss making benching and making hamotzi lechem. But if you hold it's not, it just tastes like bread, but it wasn't bread, so then he says the discussion really doesn't begin. So they pointed out that, so you have some people who say you make a bracha, and others, there's an interesting pshat in one of the Achronim, that you don't make a bracha on the man for this specific reason. He says, because if you assume, just the opposite, if you assume it kept its substance and changed its taste, then you can make a bracha. But if you assume it's going to change its substance, so the concern is, I'm thinking to have grapes, as I make a boer priya 8, and then I change my mind, I want steak now, or I want some wings. So the concern is then you end up making a bracha l'vatala, kind of like the Rashba Shita by tzedakah. Why don't we make a bracha on the mitzvah of tzedakah? So the Rashba writes is because, among many other reasons, but the Rashba's reason is because it's tali b'das acherim. It doesn't happen too often, but maybe it's happening more and more often, where you go, someone knocks on your door and says they want money, and you give them $10, $20, $50. They say, "Are you kidding me? Only $50? I'm not taking this." So the concern is to make a bracha before you give it. They won't take it, and it'll be a bracha l'vatola. Kind of like the Rabbi by Kedushin. There's a machlokas by whether there is a mitzvah of Kedushin or not. The machlokas Rambam and the Rush. The Rambam holds there is a mitzvah of Kedushin, and the bracha we make is a Birchas mitzvah. The Rush holds no, the mitzvah is p'ruvud. The bracha of Kedushin is a Birchas Shevach v'hodah. There's an interesting Ravid Shita who passes it's a Birchas mitzvah like the Rambam, but he says you make the bracha after the Kedushin. So I understand the Rush after it's a Birchas Shevach, the Rambam, the general klal over Lasiyasan. But what's pshat in the Ravid? So it's the same yisod that maybe the woman would say no. So therefore, you don't want to make a bracha on the Kedushin, woman turning you down, so therefore you make the bracha afterwards. But the same yisod that if it's totally b'das acherim, you don't make a bracha. This is even more, because this is totally in yourself, but since the assumption is you can't necessarily control your machshava on what you want to eat, it might change your mind, so therefore this is even though it's within you. But so when you make a bracha on food, so obviously we don't, once you make the bracha, we assume that's it. It's something physical, and even though you might want to change, that's it. But this is something kind of involuntary. If you change your mind, I'm really in the mood for wings now, so that might happen. Either way, it's not halach l'maisa, so we don't have it today, but that's what's interesting amongst some achronim. We don't make the bracha if it's tamul masho because of the concern of bracha l'vatola. So this,
you said that, I thought you said that it originally came down as bread. Where do we see that it came down as bread? Because they're glad.
No, that's some.
They didn't know what it was. So
no, some quote the pasuk in Parashas B'Shalach as it was raining, whatever the lashon is, and right. It's not black. They claim that it's referring to it came down as lechem. That based on the pasuk in B'Shalach, we have a Baal Kol read the exact pasuk. It says something like rain down, like bread, whatever the exact language is.
Well, it said it rained down. It doesn't use the word bread from my recollection.
Yeah, so it probably doesn't use the word lechem. I'm saying, but it's something where some Mepharshim say that's what it means, right? Obviously, the fact we have 5 different sheetas on what it is, obviously, it can't be an explicit pasuk on what it was, or else there wouldn't be.
The Rabbanan of saying bracha before eating was already exeris Moshe Rabbeinu?
No, so that's part of the discussion whether they had brachas at all. But some say.
But the reason is simply whether the takana was done or not, or is it
right? It could have been right. It could have been takana's motion in terms of that. Assuming that they benched or made brachas in the midbar, there was obviously a takana's motion. It wasn't a bit. In other words, you could have Moshe Rabbeinu doing takanas to Rabbanim like Avelis and other things. So that's what they would have to assume, that Moshe Rabbeinu.
I'm trying to understand what you said before. That it was totally on the fact that it was supernatural. It wasn't natural. But the fact is that it may not have been a takana. I mean, is that the reason there wasn't a takana, or is that?
Well, according to the way the Netziv seemed to say, is that there wasn't a takana only on something which is the normal means, like when they moved into Eretz Yisrael, they're going to plan. But anything we mala miderech hateva, they didn't institute a bracha. So is it because you don't need a bracha? Meaning it's obvious. You have man falling from heaven. You have the be'er, the water. Along those lines, it seems to say.
So that's the reason why Moshe was a Masakin, or is that because that would seem the reason why he was a Masakin? That's what
he's answering this to explain why is Birchas HaTorah and Birchas HaMazon given now. What were the Jews were learning for 40 years? That's how it's one of the rights. That's how the Tziv is answering why, with the Ramban, why wake up now? But right, but he's not. He doesn't discuss whether there was a takana to the Rabbanim. That's part of the discussion. Mm-hmm. And then they point out so then even if you assuming it is bread, so some say, well, how could you make hamotzi lechem min haaretz? You should say hamotzi lechem min hashamayim. Right? The Ramami Padu writes for the Sudas HaMashiach when you're eating the Lov and he claims there'll be man there. And he says the bracha we're going to make is hamotzi lechem min hashamayim. And in fact, the Chayyadah gets into a whole discussion about this whole issue of hydroponic vegetables in terms of what bracha do you make then if something growing on a pot? So the post can make distinctions if it's actually growing in the ground, even though it's not getting its nourishment there, versus this in your office. Because like the Aruch HaShulchan writes by mushrooms, the Gemara tells us mushrooms you make a shahakol. Because even though they grow in the ground, but they get the nourishment from the air around it, the fungi, wherever, however it works. So however, the Aruch HaShulchan writes, b'diavad, if a person made a boer pri adama, yiyotze, because at least it's in the ground, and it's not recognizable, in terms of... So similarly here, many posts can write, so even if it's a hydroponic tomato, some are... to discuss what bracha you should make l'chatchila, because one of the shahakol definitely works, but some suggest maybe adama would also work if it grows in the ground, if it comes, or if it's close to the ground. So that was then when it wasn't so popular. Today, some say it depends what the rove is. So I don't know what the rove is anymore. I assume it's still naturally grown, but it's getting closer. I know all the time in terms of all the supermarkets have hydroponics now, but I guess they're still more expensive, I think. So, but either way, that's what the Chai Adam talks about it here. So along those lines, someone is saying no, you can even make hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Why? Based on a seforno, because seforno said that if you gathered the man on Shabbos, you violate the Issa D'Oraisa of Kotzer. He says because it came down from Shamayim, but it went into the ground, and apparently it became connected. It got its nourishment from the ground. It's enough to make hamotzi lechem min haaretz. That's the whole gamut, whether they made a bracha at all, and if they did make a bracha, what bracha did they make? Hamotzi lechem min haaretz or hamotzi lechem min shamayim. But that's regarding that the first bracha. And then we got to at the end where we're discussing the definition of the Torah tells us ve'achalta v'savata uve'rachta. So we know there are two parts to the mitzvah. Ve'achalta, you need a ma'isa achila, and v'savata, and you need an act of savata. So actually, we went into, at the end of last week's shir, we discussed the Chazon Ish and Rabbi Akiva Eger. The Chazon Ish discussed, so what is the ikr, what's the tafel? In other words, is the key the achil? You need both, but what's the ikr one? Is it the key to have the achila? Is it the sevilla? So he says, my nafkamina. The nafkamina he brings down is a ger. It is last meal before he becomes a Jew. So he has a nice big meal, a lot of bread, and he obviously doesn't bench. He's a guy. And then they have the conversion, and he's still full after from that meal. Now he's a yid, and he's full from the meal before. So the Chazon Ish raises the issue: is he chayiv and benching or not? So he gets into what's the pshat. Why is it? What's pshat in the 72 minutes? Or that's only 72 minutes if you only had a kazayit. But if you're full, as long as you're full from the meal, the halach is you still bench. What's the pshat? This is because as long as you're full, it's like the achila just happened. Well, no, the achila is not the key. It's the fact as long as you're soveya still from the meal, you're obligated in benching. So the Chazon Ish says the nafkamina would be the case of a ger, and he seems to go with the sevilla angle. He thinks it's more of the ikr. I don't know whether he passes he leaves it tzarach eating l'maisa. I don't know if he passes the ger should actually bench or not. But in terms of his clearing the question, he seems to be leaning towards the ikr is the sevilla more than the achila. In contrast, Rabbi Akiva Eger discusses a similar shaila, except he discusses a yid, except a katan shehigdio, his last meal before his bar mitzvah, not before he actually reads, but he actually turns a gadol with shanim and saras, etc. So he has a meal and he benched because he's doing out chinuch, he's benching, and then now he's still full afterwards. So Rabbi Akiva Eger raises the question. Now that was only midrabanan at best, out chinuch. Perhaps minat Torah now he becomes obligated in benching because now v'achalta v'savata. So Rabbi Akiva Eger he seems to be to say the ikr is more the achila. Then it gets into whether ma'isa katan is an achila, but he raises that issue. As well as the Chai Adam raises it all revolving around the same issue. He talks about an onaim. An onaim from the time of the death to the burial, obviously not the person who's dead, meisim chavshim in mitzvahs, but someone who's obligated in the kvura. So he has a full meal, and then they go to the burial, and obviously he can't bench before, and now he comes back, he's full. So again, the Chayadim raises the question: is he chayiv in benching when he comes back from the cemetery?
Is that so obvious that he's not chayiv in benching?
You mean he's an onen?
Yeah, he's in a chivase, but isn't there a losase also involved here?
So what's the losase? What's the losase in not benching?
There's no.
I mean,
like a bracha rishona, right? You have a question of.
Yeah, bracha rishona. Right, the bracha rishona. That's the whole discussion that the Gemara says in the beginning of Ketzah Mavarchim. Asur lahanos balom hazeh below bracha. In other words, the Gemara says it's asur to get hana from something without a bracha. The Gemara quotes an apparent contradiction in Tehillim, Hashem Aretz Mola, but it says Va'aretz Hashem of the Adam. So the Gemara says Lo Kasha Kan Kodem Bracha Kan Liachar Bracha. So that's what the Avnei Neis, a lot of the Emek Bracha, they all ask, what do you mean an owning doesn't make a Bracha Rishona? The Gemara tells us Asur lahanos balom hazeh below bracha. So how can he eat without a bracha? It's true out the mitzvahs aseh, he's pater, but out the isser of getting hana that he should. So the shtickle, the answer they give in yeshivas, the lemnis they give is basically that the asur lahanos balom hazeh below bracha stems from the chiyuv bracha and the chiyuv mitzvah. Only someone who has an obligation to make the bracha. So then, of course, it's not really a losa, but it's isser aseh, and therefore would cause him to. But someone who's pater, there's a whole share on that. But that's the shikol. That's what they give. But benching pashes from avato mitzvah aseh. There's no isser, like any other, you don't put on tefillah and you don't do that. So the Chayadim raises the question. Rabbi Akiva Eger thinks this case is different. He thinks for sure in this case the Ava would have to bench, because he says the other two cases, again, which I'm not saying it's so clear, but Rabbi Akiva Eger says it's clear to him, that he's saying the other two cases with a gersh and a sky or a katan, they're vadai pater lagamri, they had no chiyuv at all. So then it's just a sevilla. But here he claims by an oni, it's not that he's pater. Basically, fundamentally, he's chayev in all these mitzvahs, except he's an honest. So Chazal tell him he can't do it. But fundamentally, he's a gavra, he's a bar chiyuva, and therefore he thinks that case is different than the. One could discuss either way. One could argue on the onein aspect, and one could argue the other way, which different achronim do argue. But that's Rabbi Akiva Eger. So those three cases, the gersh and the skaya, the katan shehigdio, and the only this clarifies more nafkaminas between whether the ikar is the achila or the sevilla. In fact, they point out that that's actually a whole discussion among the Rishonim, because what exactly is the chiyuv daraisa of Birchas Hamazon? Because there's two different gemaras that seem to imply different things. There's a gemara in Birchas and Avchaf that the Malachi Ashara is basically a medrash, but it's brought down and the post can bring it down. That basically, look how great the Jewish people are. Achalta v'savata. I only tell them they have to bench when the savata, but look, even if they eat a kazayis, a kabeya, look how great the Jews. Implying from that Gemara, the only time you chayev in benching is if you eat a kadei sevilla. However, in the Gemara later on, Mem Hey, Mem Tes, the whole discussion in the Gemara. What exactly, different opinions on Maram, do you need a kazayis, a kabeya? So Tosfos holds the Ikka Gemara is the Gemara in Brachas Chafam and Aleph. He says the Raisa we paskin it's only Kedei Sevilla, and the other Gemaras of kabeya, and because that's only a smachtas derabanan. Don't pay attention to those Gemaras for Deraisa. And the Rashba disagrees and says the Ikka Gemara is there, and therefore the Rashba Shita lahalacha is that a kazayis plus a drink is a deraisa. The Rashba writes, based on different limudim, he says you need of course a kabeya and a drink also, but he says if you have a kazayis and a drink, that's the chiyuv deraisa. So it's a machokas tosfos and the Rashba. We pass in the machaber paskins and shulchan aruch like the Bali tosfos, and we assume the chiyuv deraisa is only kedei sevilla. And in fact, interesting, the Ramah seems to be choshesh v'shitas Rashba in another area, because it's interesting. The Ramah writes that when you get into who you should, if someone, during those days, now we have Zeman, but during those days, you used to have one person benching and everyone listening. So that's something else, giving a Kohen, Levi, Zeman, that's not what we're talking about here. But there used to be one person used to read the benching. So the Ramah points out, in that scenario, that's not really Lamaisa, because everyone benches themselves today, you should give the one, both people are Eda Kadei Sevilla, the one who had a drink, over the one who didn't have a drink, he should be the one leading benching. Because according to the Rashba, if you don't have a drink, you're not chayiv in benching min Torah. So, bigger than we pass in like Tosfos, but the Ramah is interesting, brings down the Shita just to be choshesh in theory for it, because that doesn't apply today. But I guess it could come up if you're a place where, I guess if the only person knows how to bench, it won't make a difference then if one person's reading for everyone else. So, but we could probably come up with some heichatimsa, but we'll see. But that's what the Rashba is shita is. We don't pass like that, but the Ramah is choshesh alisul chumra. That if you have a choice in who's gonna bench, then he says to go with the one who actually drank. But that's the shaila. It's deraisa d'Rabbanan. So then that's why. By Birchas Muslims, it depends. If you had a Kadei Sevilla, so therefore, and you're a suffix, if you bench, then we paskin that you have to repeat benching. But if you only had a Kazayat, if you only had a Chiyav d'Rabbanan, so then you wouldn't suffix d'Rabbanan Wakua. And that's what they point out. The Gemara in Birchas, actually, the whole discussion there about what the nature of the obligation of women in Birchas Hamazon. The Mishnah over there on the bottom of Chafam and Aleph, turning over Chafam and Beis, talks about some mitzvahs women are pater from, and different mitzvahs women are chayav from. So in the Gemara in Birchas Chafam and Beis goes through some exceptions. So we know a mitzvahs asay shaz man gram, and the Gemara, the Mishnah Kedushin goes into greater length there, but the Gemara tells us Nashim chayavis bekiddush hayom. Women are chayiv in kiddush vayay. It's a mitzvah asay shazman grama. You only can make kiddush on Shabbos. But therefore they point out that's an exception to the rule. Kol sheyeshna b'shmira yeshna b'zechira. That whoever's included in shmira Shabbos, but that's why. And similarly, the Gemara makes a similar drasha by women being chayiv in Torah in matzah leal Pesach. Ayat is man grama, so they should be pater. So again, the Gemara makes a drasha b'zachem. Whoever's obligated, who cannot eat chametz on Pesach is obligated in the positive mitzvah of eating matzah. So therefore they point out. Then the Gemara goes on. What about benching? So at first, what's the question? Pshita. It's not as man grama. So why is there even a discussion that women aren't obligated in benching? It's a classical case of mitzvah says she loves man grama, so of course women are chayav. So Gemara goes through the discussion, the Gemara, whether women, you're right, everyone agrees women are chayav in benching. The machlokas in the Gemara is if they're chayav min Torah or midrabanan. The Gemara says ma'inaf kamina if they're obligated min Torah midrabanan. Lafuke Rabbi midei chavan. So again, so similarly then, if a woman's chayav min Torah, then she could be the one when during those days reading the benching for everyone in theory. But if she was only chayiv midrabanan, then and there are other people chayiv min Torah, so then she wouldn't be able to. So the Gemara doesn't come out. Well, it's a speik at the dina. We'll come back to in a second. But what's the issue? Why would women only be chayiv midrabanan? Like it's a mitzvah asay sholavs man grama. So the machlokas Rashi and Tosas, what exactly, according to the opinion, who says that women are only obligated midrabanan, what is it based on? So Rashi says because they don't have a chelik ba'aretz. Al eretz chamda tova, we mentioned in the note that we mentioned the land of Eretz Israel, and women don't have a pure chelik ba'aretz. Rashi said, what about benos slavchad? That was, they took the portion of their father, wasn't their own portion. So Rashi writes that women, the reason according to that shita, it says the woman might only be obligated midrabanan and not min Torah, since they can't say, or they can't say on the same level, Eretz Chanda Tova, because they don't get a chelik ba'aretz. That's what Rashi's time is.
It was the Serena. has to do with Sorenu, not
Right.
Chelek Oretz.
Yeah, right. They don't.
Is
Right.
that the same?
Yeah, well, he writes. Yeah, I'll have to see what he calls. He writes because of Chalukas Aretz. That's what Rashi writes. No, I'm gonna get that's Tosas. You're gonna get to. You said Briska. What did you just say? Yeah, well, that's Tosas. I'll get
It's
to
a very
that.
small Tosas. It's very bottom of the page, 3-4 lines.
Yeah,
Tosas,
that's another one. This one's a big one. This one is because this one's quoting. This is in Mon May, so he's quoting the one over there. He's talking about that's later on, but so he basically quotes Perush HaKunteris, and he says, "What are you talking about, Rashi? How could you say?" You're telling me the reason why women are only obligated to be dramatic and benching because they don't have a chayek ba'aretz, then I'm in trouble. Meaning me, not Rashi. I don't know if Rashi was a Kohen or Levi. He says if that's the case, what about the Kohanim Sheva Levi, the Kohanim Leviim? They don't have a chayek ba'aretz, and yet we know Kohanim are the ones who bench. They'll first. So what are you talking? It can't be that. So what would Rashi answer to that? So obviously Rashi knew that they didn't have a chayek ba'aretz, so Rashi would obviously answer because of the 48 cities, we know the 6 are in Miklat, the 42 are in Midrash, so that's the question, so whether that's enough of a chayek, so that's going to be the Machlokas Rashi and Tosas, whether the chayek of the 48 cities is not enough to fulfill the requirement in benching of the second bracha, because we have an interesting similar discussion regarding bikurim by a ger, whether a ger maybe Eino Koreh, because could you say okay Yitzchak, how could you say those things? And similarly by davening for the Yomid, actually I think we passed him yes, but that's the part of the discussion. Somehow a ger cannot I don't know why we daven would make a difference, but in terms of I guess that's all he's chayav is he can't say okay Avraham Yitzchak because it's not true. So that's a discussion how far what's considered what do you have to be to B'nai Avram, but that seems to be a machlokas here. Rashi isn't bothered by the Kohanim or Leviim. He says that's enough. Apparently Tosas says it's not enough. So what is the reason then according to Tosas? So Tosas says because it says al briska shachasamta v'sereno al taraska shalantado. So we know we mentioned bris milah and Torah. I dropped someone off. There's a bris going on at Chabad tonight. Or not tonight. I hope not tonight. I assume it's late afternoon. But we say Al Briska Shachazabda V'Sareno. And it says, so we know a bris obviously a woman is a Bechal a bris. And also the Talmud Torah, they're exempt from the pure obligation of learning Torah. Of course, Nashim Chayavas for Birchas HaTorah. And there are many reasons why. They're certainly chayiv in the pragmatic halachas of Shabbos, kosher, etc., how to keep a kosher home, and all the halachas nogeya to them. So whatever the pshat you want to give and why Nashim chayav is Birchas HaTorah, the Rav Chaim, the Ramban, where we gave a Hoshiran. Either way, women are obligated in Birchas HaTorah, but not in the pure, as the Beis Levi points out, not in the pure mitzvah of Talmud Torah, B'Torah's pure learning lishma. And therefore, Tosas says, and the Gemara tells us in the end of Birchas, Mamches around there, if you don't say Bris V'Torah, you're not Yotzei your mitzvah. So, in the discussion, the rights of Drabanan, which way isn't good, but clearly, at least Midrabanan, they say, if you don't say Bris V'Torah, so we see Bris and Torah are an integral part of the mitzvah Birchas Hamazon, and therefore that's why Tosas says, according to that opinion, that says women are only obligated to be drabanan, it's based on the fact that they don't have bris v'torah. They don't have bris v'torah, and therefore they're only chayav midrabanan. So therefore, since it's a sveika dedina, we don't come out l'maisa. So obviously, the minig is that women then do not bench for men. I guess the big shiloh, where Rabbi Eger discusses it in Hilchos Yantav, but the big shiloh would be is. In terms of Sudas Yantiv, or we'll see a Shabbos. Well, Sudas more Yantiv because Shabbos, the Chayiv, or Rabbi Eger, this I think is the first piece in the Shuvas of Rabbi Eger. He gets into whether women are Chayiv and Simchas Yantiv. You forget.
How do you possibly, let's say a woman doesn't know whether she benched?
Yeah, so therefore, so that's So that's a machlokas apostim. So I think we go with she shouldn't bench over them.
Oh, really?
No, well, because it's a machlokas because she, because we're not sure if she's chayav in Torah or not. So therefore, number one.
Is that a das yachid? The Rabbanan that it's only the Rabbanan?
No, it's this 2 days in the Gemara and the poskim. It's a discussion among the poskim. Some say, I think it's the beer. Some bring down. No, it's not a shiloh. The vade chayiv min Torah, and they should bench over. I'm just saying it's a machlokas among the poskim. So I'm just going with Safar Brachas V'Hakel. But there are some poskim say there is no suffix here. Again, that's assuming, of course, a woman ate enough Kedei Sevilla as well.
My question is what's the process here? If we're dealing just with a woman, I thought, so if I'm wrong, then it doesn't make a difference. But I thought we paskin that it's daraisa, and we treat it as a daraisa when we're dealing with her.
No, but that's
right?
well,
is that not true?
No, it's half true. I mean, that's the shiloh in the Gemara. That's the shiloh in the poskim.
So the Maisa?
Yes, I saw brought down poskim. I think poskim bring down both ways.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just saying is so. I just I'd go with Safek Brachas V'Hakel, but I'm saying that, or I'll use the lashon of the Mishnah Berurah, not by here, but Hamavarech Lo Hifsid, or you could take one because he talked about that in other areas. Like let's say in other cases where I can either way she does she does Jeish Ami Litzmach. I'm saying in terms I could check. I could check into what the minhag olam is on that, which I guess that probably vary. But I just saw it quickly before, I was just going behind the postum. I looked it over and and I saw just a quick.
Anyway, you're only talking about the way we don't do it. You're talking about when she would be.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm saying it's
nothing to do with.
No, for her it is right. Nothing to do with Zeman, right? That has to do with Zeman is a totally different shiloh. Yeah. Women, it's a machlokas to Vilna Gaon and Mishnah Berurah among the Rishonim. According to the Gra, 3 women are chayiv in Zeman, and the Mishnah Berurah is right that it's a rishus, that they don't have to, that they can.
The Loshen, maybe it's a bear hater talks about because he uses the terminology Mekuya was. He doesn't say may, he says they are required.
No, that's the
Zeman. The Mishnah Berurah, I think, quotes that. I can't remember him saying the other one. Otherwise, you're saying
I'm pretty sure the Mishnah Berurah writes it's a rishus. Because that's what everyone quotes when they don't want to have women do Zeman. So, but I'm saying but right, no one can argue Vikra Din. She definitely can and perhaps chayav. That issue with Zeman, it touches on much more than Zeman. Like it's not usually a Zeman issue when you're discussing whether it's usually a much bigger picture in terms of what. But obviously, privately, women doing Zeman, no one should even know about it. Like how would anyone should. The issue is more, it's a political issue, say, with what women could do, what they can't do. So, but al pi halacha, there's nothing to talk about. Minimally, again, that's if the 3 women are by themselves. If there's if they have 3 men, if they're obviously they have to, then they can't bench. I mean, they can't do the zeman. They have to go with the man. But if there's 3 women and only 1 or 2 men, then within men you get into discussions more. But that's a separate zima. But Mekra Din, again, it's probably more popular today than it was before. I know someone came back from seminary. She was telling me how. What do you mean? All women do zima. What are you talking about? I'm saying so in her place, obviously all women do zima. But I'm saying obviously in different places I'd say all women don't do zima. It's not a halachic issue. It usually won't come down to it. I'm saying minimally it's a rishus. And if they tell you not to do zima, it's because of other concerns, not so much, not a hilchah zima issue. Like unfortunately, many other issues, they don't come down to what the halachic issue is. Whether it's associated with different groups, whatever the people would have, it's more of a meta halachic issue in terms of what you make. What you make a judgment call, what you make an issue over, what you don't. If you should make an issue at all, if it's something to be concerned with, that's a separate share. But in terms that doesn't affect the chayiv and zeman, whether it will make a difference because it's all 3 women, so they're the same anyway. So whichever, right? So I saw some say that so therefore either way. So hamavarach will have sid, but because there's probably what to discuss. Some people say that women, are chayiv in Torah. So, but I could check if there's a minhag in terms of that's what would come up if suffix benching. Again, assuming they eat a kedei savia, because if a man also has to eat a kedei savia in order for him to.
It's not. It's also not a classic suffix. It's really a spec speka, right? Your suffix is she has. First of all, you have a suffix. She doesn't know whether she benched. Then you have a shaila whether it's actually deraisa or derabbanan.
Right. So the whole right, because you make distinctions like let's say we have a halacha by avelis, halacha chedivrei hameko ba'avelis. So there's a whole shira I'm not going into, but let's say kriya. We know we do kriya by the kotel. So the discussion, well, pre-1967, you also did Kriya on Yerushalayim. Post-1967, a major machlokas among the poskim, Ramosha, the Rav. L'maisa, most people don't do Kriya on Yerushalayim. They have in mind when they do it on the Kotel. So some want to say, because since it's a machlokas ha-poskim, so halacha kedivrei ha-mekel ba'avelis. However, the problem is, if you look at the Gemara says, Kriya l'chud, avelos l'chud. We don't apply that klal by Kriya. So what do you mean? How could you say halacha kedivrei meikon say not to do Kriya on Yerushalayim? So I think Rav Shechta said, or other posts can bring down. No, but here it's a different. If you definitely an avel and you definitely have a chiyah, the question is whether you did the Kriya or not. So then you have to be machmir. But if you hear the whole issue of the chayiv and Kriya at all is in doubt. Because maybe you don't have to do Kriya at all, so then you could say halacha kedivrei. So that type of svara, there is a difference between number one, if the chiyuv,
right?
If the chiyuv is there's a bit, but I'm saying it's true about suffix. If you know you chayiv, but I'm not sure if I did it versus I'm not even sure if I'm chayiv, so then there are differences in spekas.
In Sfiras Omer, we use the suffix speka.
Yeah, you have right.
You do say the.
Exactly, yeah, because then we have, because according to many, because really we don't really pass, most of the Rishonim are against the Hilchas Gedolos anyway. Right, so we assume it's really 49 separate mitzvahs, and with this Choshesh, l'chumra, but really right. So we use, in general we use a lot of sniffim to be mako, we use different...
this is about as parallel as you could get.
Right, so we could, so I guess, so on Shabbos, I guess, so the halach is, if you forget ritzei in benching, the halach is you have to go back. We'll get to Shaloshis in a minute. But in general, what's the klal? So on Shabbos and Yantiv, you go back. Of course, with Yalav Yavo. Rosh Chodesh, you don't go back. So what's the general klal? The klal is you have to ask yourself, am I chayiv to eat the meal or not? If I'm chayiv to eat the meal, then I have to go back if I missed. But if I don't have to eat the meal in the first place, a Rosh Chodesh, I have no chiyuv suda, so I don't have to go back. But Shabbos and Yantiv, presumably that gets into the question of women whether they have a chiyuv suda. But assuming you have a chiyuv suda, you have to go back. So the big question comes up is shalosh shudis. So because the Ramah brings down that you don't have to go back if you forget ritzei by shalosh shudis, you don't go back. The question is why not? You have a chayiv with chayiv to have bread all 3 meals. So they call it, I think, Rabbi Don't Tam. Somebody should have hold. You could fulfill your 3rd meal through other means. You don't necessarily have to have bread. Then cake's better than cake's the next best thing. Chips, fish, whatever. But you don't have to have bread according to some. So l'chatchila, of course, you should have bread, assuming you could still eat on those short Shabboses. But ultimately, but since even if you do have bread, so if you forgot ritzei, the halach is you don't have to go back. So that would be and they point out there's a halacha that there's a harachama. If you remember before you finish to start the 4th bracha, you could put it in if you forgot ritzei. There's an interesting discussion among the posts. And what about if it happens shalosh shudis? Should I make that bracha or not? Because on one hand, I have a chiyuv pas. On the other hand, that's a discussion. I think some posts can talk about, making the bracha even by shalosh shudis. But they point out that this issue about forgetting, that gets into when you forget ritzei, what's the pshat? If you forget, like we discussed by davening, if you bench without a ritzeh or a yalav yava when you had it, is that like you didn't bench at all, or is you got credit for benching, but you're lacking the chiyuv haskara? My nafkamina, either you have to bench over again. So the nafkamina, the Rav brings down one interesting nafkamina is ziman. Let's say the three of you all forgot ritzeh, and it's like Friday night, Shabbos morning, and then you say, oh wait, we forgot ritzeh. So now you all have to bench over. Do you do another ziman or not? So he says, if you hold you didn't bench at all, then of course you need a ziman. If you hold you get credit for benching, but you're lacking the chiyuv haskara, you don't have to. So I think the Rav Pascha, he said, you don't do ziman again. You feel you yot to the mitzvah benching, and you're only going back for the chiyuv haskara. There's one last thing. There's a famous, whether it's true or not, we can discuss. But there's a famous statement they say in the name of Rav Chaim Volozhin that they claimed he did not sing Sur Mishal Lachalna, one of the famous Zmiras we sing on Shabbos. Of course, I know you're thinking he's a Litvak. He didn't sing anything. So he didn't say Sur Mishal Lachalna. Or so the question is, so many speculate to why not. Because this goes back, see, Sur Mishal Lachalna, it's a whole discussion how far back it goes, because if you look at the Sur Mishal Lachalna, it only mentions the first three brachas in it. It has no mention. It starts over Ziman, goes through the Hazar Zalomo, it goes through the Eretz Chemda, then it goes to Yerushalayim, and then it goes to Borei Pri Hagafen. So it doesn't mention the fourth bracha. Some want to claim because Sur Mishal was even written before the fourth bracha. You know, one of the early Tanam really put it in before Rabbi Gamliel instituted it for the Arukei Beitar. So this is among Sfarim Ashkenaz. So people speculate Rav Chaim did not want to say Sur Mishal Lachano, but by saying Sur Mishal Lachano, he was concerned he'd fulfill his mitzvah benching, and then when he benched, it would be a bracha of Atola. So obviously, our minig is not that way. The minig Yisrael is to say Sur Mishal Lachano. So what don't we agree on? So there could be many reasons why. One is the topic of mitzvah svichas kavana. Now, as we know, it's a whole discussion in the Gemara whether mitzvahs require intent or not. So therefore, maybe he was mesupik if he held that mitzvah svichas kavana, which we actually Birchas is deraisa. I guess it depends if you had Kedei Sevilla. So therefore, we usually assume anyway that on a mitzvah deraisa, mitzvah svichas kavana, but a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, mitzvah ain't svichas kavana. So therefore, so you have to have kavana. So Birchas is a mitzvah deraisa. So most people don't even know you can fulfill your mitzvah benching. Well, if you can, but but you have to have kavanah to do it, and since you're not going to have kavanah to do it, so therefore it wouldn't be an issue because it's a mitzvah deraisa. And that could be perhaps, I'm just speculating, maybe that's why they didn't put the fourth bracha in there, because the mitzvah ain't svichas kavanah. So maybe on the fourth bracha you would have been noted, and anyone, assuming Rav Chaim Volozhin mahalach. But either way, that's one issue. Secondly, they say there's no bris in Torah. That's a discussion whether that's the me'akev deraisa d'Rabbanan. And also we have a general cloud called Mashana, whoever changes the text of the Chachamim. So even though in our Torah it's one way, but now the rabbi said this way, so if you don't follow the way the rabbi said, so therefore you're not yotzei on the benching. So for many different reasons, our minig is, or the minig is that people sing Sur Mishal, it's not an issue. Some people came over to me and told me, you know what, the minig is to sing it right before benching, which I thought that makes it even worse, because at least, obviously if you're singing Sur Mishal and you're eating the challah, obviously it's not benching. But right before benching, I'm not saying it is a problem, but if it is a problem, that makes it more of one. So then I saw some bring down, some have a minig to do it after benching. That after you're benching, and then, I guess during the Oneg Shabbos, after the meal, they do it afterwards. But that's, but anyway, I have a difficulty with, I don't understand how he could have fulfilled the mitzvah anyway. If you have an answer for me, I'll take it. But we all know the halacha is, as I just pointed out, if you bench all 4 brachas, but you leave out Ritzei, you're not Yotzei. So there's no mention of Shabbos in the Torah Mishal, and I'm assuming your Chaim Legend was talking about on Shabbos. During the week, okay, but on Shabbos, there's no mention of Ritzei, so therefore I don't even know how you could be Yotzei, unless, of course, we threw in something afterwards. But that's a whole, so that's a whole discussion on that. Our minig is,
anyway, you could have a negative.
Negative
kavanah probably solves the problem.
Negative, all those things, negative kavanah, and you're not doing it in the matbeh. So, L'maisa is not a problem, and that's why anyone who wants to, will continue singing or saying, Sor Mishalo Yarazi.
I've always said that if you bench without what say, there's an opinion that still you bench, you just have to go back to be able to say what say.
Right, well, no, it's not, the luck is, if you bench without, and you leave out Ritzei, you have to bench over.
Right.
The question is, why do you have to bench over? Do you have to bench over, right, do you want to say, so, according to that, right, okay, so Razi's making a good point, so therefore, according to that Shita, you want to say, according to, let's say, the Rav's Mahalach, that you Yotzei bench, so, okay, so, Rav Chaim Volozhin obviously he wasn't claiming to be, even though maybe in the Sor Mishalol he was saying the Zeman, but maybe, right, so whether you have to go back or not, you're right, at least there's, b'diavad you have, right, but even l'chatchila, but you can't l'chatchila then go ahead and say Sor Mishalol, leaving out the Shabbos part. You can't go, no one said you could go bench and leave out Ritzei, and then, so, because in Sor Mishalol but right, it's a good point, then maybe, b'diavad, but again, that one, Rav Chaim Volozhin wasn't looking for, he wasn't looking for a way to pater off, benching. Even those who want to cut benching out, they only cut out the 4th bracha. But they want to, some have, where they say they're running to learn, they can't daven the 4th. At least the other stuff afterwards already has been hagyam. But, but today, so, unless you're a big massman and stuff, that you don't waste 30 seconds, and I recommend, you go with the minhag again. But, that's the end of, that's the end of benching. Torah is over before B'drabanan. So those are some of the issues with Birchas Hamazon, and the issues of, Ritzei, Yalav Yavo, Nashim, Zor Mishalo.